Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and welcome to the ALCTS webinar on supporting OER at your institution. I am Miriam Nauenberg, a member of the ALCTS Continuing Education Committee. I will be your host for today's webinar. Our presenters today are Cheryl Coulier, Regina Gong, and Jeremy Smith. Cheryl Coulier is the Open Education Librarian at the University of Arizona and coordinates the library's textbook affordability initiatives. She is one of the instructors in the Open Textbook Network's Certificate in OER Librarianship. Regina Gong is the Open Educational Resources and Student Success Librarian at Michigan State University. She has extensive experience in building, implementing, and managing OER projects, beginning with her successful tenure as OER Project Manager at Lansing Community College and now at MSU Libraries. Regina serves on the SPARC Open Education Advisory Group and in the Steering Committee. Jeremy Smith is the Open Education and Research Services Librarian at the UMass Amherst Libraries. He is responsible for managing all library efforts around OER on campus and is involved with regional and national OER efforts. He is also the library liaison to the journalism and communication departments. His previous position in the library was manager of a grant-funded project to digitize the entire W.E.B. Du Bois manuscript collection housed in the UMass Library Special Collections and University Archives. Prior to acquiring his MLS in 2009, Jeremy was a staff producer and editor for the Media Education Foundation, a Northampton-based nonprofit video production company founded by UMass communication professor Sut Jolly. Cheryl, Regina, and Jeremy bring considerable experience to today's topic, and we are fortunate to have them with us today. A few logistics for today's presentation. All attendees are muted to prevent background noise, and we do not have interactive chat capabilities. You may, however, comment on today's presentation using Twitter. The hashtag is ALCTSCE. We do not monitor the Twitter feed, so if you have questions during the presentation, please type them into the questions box on your screen. We will have time for questions during and after the presentation. Finally, this webinar is being recorded. You will receive an email with links to the recording and presentation slides shortly after the presentation concludes. And now, here is Cheryl. There will be a slight delay while we change presenters.
Thank you so much, Miriam. I am switching over to my screen. Okay, is it showing the title slide, Supporting OER at Your Institution? Okay, I'm going to assume it is. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We're so happy you could join us. We're going to start things off with a quick poll. Let's see. Is it? I'm not seeing the poll on my screen. Sorry, this is not working as expected. Oh, okay. I'm getting the message, 74% have voted. So we're going to go ahead and close the poll and see the results. And unfortunately, I cannot see the results. Okay. I'm sure somebody will tell me what they are, and then we'll comment on that later. Sorry about that. So these are our faces. I know you can only hear us and not see us. And I'm going to focus in my section on how to run a bare bones OER program on a shoestring budget. And I'm so jealous of the advanced services that Regina and Jeremy have developed, but you can still build and sustain an OER initiative with few resources. First, let's start off with a common understanding of open educational resources, because there's a lot of confusion between free resources and OER. This is how the Hewlett Foundation, which funds a lot of OER projects, defines it. The key phrases here are teaching, learning, and research materials in any medium that reside in the public domain or have been released under an open license with no or limited restrictions. So OER could be full courses, syllabi, test questions, lecture notes, assignments, games, lab activities, and more. So the customizability is what makes OER unique. In order to be considered open, a resource needs to be free to the user and give them the freedom to do what we call the 5 R's. So the first R is retain, which means you can download, you can duplicate. Reuse means you can use the content in more than one way, more than once. Revise means you can modify it, you can translate it. Remix means you can combine it with other content, mash it up into something new. And then redistribute means you can share copies. So Creative Commons licenses help make OER possible. While copyright is all rights reserved, Creative Commons is some rights reserved, and creators get to decide which rights to keep and which to share. I can't go into a lot of detail about Creative Commons licenses here, but it's important to know the basics when working with OER. So these are the 4 building blocks of Creative Commons licenses. The BY stands for attribution, giving credit for the work that you're using or adapting. NC stands for non-commercial. It means you can't use someone else's work for commercial advantage or monetary compensation. SA stands for share alike. If you make changes to the content, you need to license your new work under the identical terms. And ND stands for no derivatives. You can use all or part of the content, but if you make any changes to it, you can't reshare it. So those building blocks can be combined in these 6 ways. CC BY is the least restrictive, and CC BY NC ND is the most restrictive. And any CC license with the ND no derivatives element isn't considered OER because the no derivatives doesn't allow redistribution if a work's been revised. And remember that redistribute and revise are 2 of the 5 R's that define OER. So that was a crash course in OER and Creative Commons. And now let's get into how to start or expand an OER program. Spark's latest Connect OER report found that institutional OER efforts are overwhelmingly being led by libraries. And within libraries, OER leadership is housed in a variety of departments, as shown on this chart. At the University of Arizona, I started leading OER in 2004 as a liaison librarian. And in 2018, I moved to the newly formed Content and Collections Department and took on the title Open Education Librarian. My job description, though, is much broader than OER. I oversee all course material initiatives, including ebooks and streaming video. And I prefer to see libraries having full-time OER positions like Regina's, but it is possible to lead an OER program while wearing multiple hats. So when I work one-on-one with UA instructors, my approach is to present a range of options for free or low-cost course materials. I frame it as a spectrum of affordability, and the key to all of these options is that they're available on the first day of class, increasing student success. So I start with OER because they're free, they offer perpetual access, and they're customizable. And then next we look at library license materials. And each term our campus bookstore shares the list of adopted textbooks with us, and we try to acquire every single one as an ebook. But on average, we can only get about 20% from publishers. If free to use options aren't available or not a good fit, I advise instructors to look at inclusive access or automatic billing It's a bookstore program that provides digital course materials at a cost. We could do a whole separate webinar on the pros and cons of inclusive access, but its use has exploded on our campus. And if you're interested in learning more about it, I wrote a book chapter and we'll share that link with you later. So awareness and usage of OER in higher education are on the rise, but we still have a lot of work to do. Commercial publishers often emphasize these barriers in their sales pitches to faculty, telling them that OER are too hard to find and too much work and of questionable quality. So I'll address ways to overcome these first 3 barriers in a moment, but I want to share some suggestions for dealing with 4 through 8. So number 4, the time it takes. This is where faculty grants, which Regina and Jeremy will discuss, can be an incentive, but all libraries can offer OER guidance and advice to faculty. We don't do grants at the University of Arizona right now. 5 through 6, the subject coverage and the lack of ancillaries, like test banks or homework systems, that can be a barrier. Availability of these is growing all the time thanks to investments in OER by states, the Department of Education, philanthropic groups, and institutions. This is also where you can encourage faculty to practice open pedagogy, involving students in the creation of OER instead of doing throwaway assignments. So students can write banks of test questions or create how-to lab videos or collaboratively curate and write course readings. Number 7, the promotion and tenure concerns. The belief that creation or use of OER won't count toward tenure. Even if OER aren't explicitly mentioned in P&T guidelines, I think faculty can make a really strong case for the impact they make with OER. They can focus on accessibility, equity, diversity, innovation, student success. All of these are probably key parts of your institution's strategic plan. And number 8, ridiculous myths. So this one, if I save students money on textbooks, they'll just spend it on beer, was shared with me by a development officer who didn't think she could pitch OER to donors, and it made my jaw drop. This is where I emphasize that our campus food pantry is currently serving 950 students a week, and it can't keep up with demand. So here are some low-cost ways to boost awareness of OER on campus. This fall, I co-founded an OER learning community with another faculty member. The group decides our topics, and they've included copyright, Creative Commons licenses, open pedagogy, tips for finding OER, and more. We're one of many campuses that has some sort of textbook affordability task force. Key partners include the bookstore, IT, the teaching center, the Disability Resource Center, which often gets overlooked but is a really key partner, instructional designers, student government, faculty, and administrators. I include holding events and workshops here with the caveat that I've had some really poor turnouts. I've had more success reaching faculty by partnering with liaison librarians to present at department meetings to faculty. And as far as events, one of the best and easiest activities I've done for Open Education Week, which is coming up March 2 through 6, was to put up a giant whiteboard with the prompt, if I didn't have to buy textbooks, I could ... And I gave students colorful Post-it notes. They kept adding to the board. And this orange Post-it, buy groceries, I like how she added hashtag the struggle, is one example. I used the students' Post-its in presentations on campus to raise faculty awareness of the tough choices that students are having to make between textbooks and necessities like food and rent. So another idea is to identify and promote faculty champions. I asked our graphic designer to create these textbook hero posters featuring faculty who use OER. Another campus creates individual posters for faculty to display on their office doors, showing how much they've saved students with OER that semester. I thought that was a great idea. And when I met with our Student Government Association last year, I urged them to pass a resolution encouraging faculty to use free or low-cost course materials. And they did that this spring. Improving OER discovery is a really important role for libraries. And since there's no central OER repository, the first place I personally look is the Open Textbook Library from the University of Minnesota. It currently has more than 680 complete textbooks, and most feature faculty-authored reviews, which can help address quality concerns. And MARC records for the Open Textbook Library are available for any library to add to their catalog. There are also several mega search tools for finding OER. My favorite is Oasis from SUNY Geneseo. We've added a customized Oasis search box to our Find OER page, and the search widget code is freely available. LibGuides or websites are another way to improve OER discovery. We've got a variety of OER web pages, including a list of courses using OER. And then OpenStax, which is a project out of Rice University, is my favorite publisher of open textbooks. Because they offer free ancillary materials like PowerPoint slides and homework answers for faculty, as well as optional low-cost courseware, OpenStax is a great alternative to commercial publishers' course in a box. When you're starting an OER program and looking for faculty to recruit, I recommend first looking at the subject areas that OpenStax covers. I keep a set of OpenStax print books in my office for meetings with faculty and administrators. I emphasize that OpenStax books are formally peer-reviewed, just like commercial textbooks. New editions are continually produced. And when I hand OER skeptics a full-color OpenStax textbook, they inevitably say, "Oh, it's a real textbook." One of our administrators said that to me. The print copies also come in handy for open textbook petting zoos at events. So I hope that's given you a few ideas. We're going to pause in between each of our sections for questions, and we'll also try to leave time for questions at the end, so feel free to add questions to the chat as we go.
Great, thank you so much, Cheryl. At this point, folks, feel free to add your questions to the questions box. I've got one question here for you, Cheryl. What is the biggest misconception about OER materials for students and faculty, and do the misconceptions differ? It's kind of a broad question, but have you noticed any patterns there?
It is. Let's see. I would say that the quality is low is probably the biggest misconception. And I don't tell faculty that they're high quality. I emphasize the peer review process, and I tell faculty that it's up to them to judge the quality for themselves. You know, they can look at reviews, they're the subject matter experts, and I just present them with a range of options for course materials, and it's up to them to decide what will work best for their course.
Okay, great, thank you. I don't see any other questions in our pane right now, so I'm going to hand it back over to you, Cheryl, to continue with the presentation.
Okay, and I'm going to pass things along to Regina.
Okay, hi everyone. Can you see my screen? Well, I hope so. So, thank you, Cheryl, for that. For telling us the story about your OER initiative at University of Arizona. And as you may find as you are listening to us, each of us has a different perspective, with regards to the OER work that we've been doing in our institutions. So you have here in this slide the year 2014. So that is really the time when I started my work with OER, and that was during my time at a community college. So I used to work at Lansing Community College, which is also here in Michigan, in Lansing. And that was around the time when we were investigating ways in which we can help our students in terms of their textbook affordability issues. So I cannot emphasize the importance of goals in your OER initiatives. So I think before you embark on an OER initiative, or if, I'm sure a lot of you are currently into OER initiatives in your institutions. I'm sure you've thought about the goals. And for me, this is what we had when I was at a community college, and what we have now too, now that I am at MSU. Really, it's textbook affordability, removing that barrier of high textbook cost for our students, making them more accessible regardless of their capacity to pay. And also for our faculty, we need to give them the chance to be able to do some pedagogical innovations around the way they engage with openly licensed materials, something that they cannot do with the traditional copyrighted textbooks. And so those are the two main goals that we have for our initiative. And as Cheryl pointed out in her previous slides, you see that the libraries are really leading the way towards OER leadership. And I'd like to share with you my history on that, because I used to be the head of technical services and systems at Lansing Community College. And then the OER project management got added just because I was so passionate about that this initiative, and I really took it on, even on top of the many things already on my plate. And so a lot of us would probably start doing OER work on top of what we already have, and it's not. And that's the most common model that I see among us librarians. I mean, I am fortunate now that when I moved here at MSU, my work is solely focused on OER and student success. And I think it is something that we in the library, and certainly our library leadership and institutional leadership, should strive to do. There really has to be a dedicated person who will oversee this OER project campus-wide. So the thing about this, and this is what I find that, the formula, so to speak, that works really well for any OER initiative, it's that bottom up and top down support. And then you reside on that middle, which is this circle, because you really need the bottom up support that comes from faculty, from students, from your instructional designers, from librarians, from the different stakeholders on campus. But you also need that top down support from your administration, because they are the ones who are going to give the financial resources, the human resources that you need in order to be successful in your project. So if you have both those support, I think the OER initiative would be a success. And so these are just the effective strategies that I find in the years that I've been leading OER projects. Really need, as I mentioned earlier, we really need to be clear as to the goals of your OER initiative. And not only that, you have to communicate it widely across the different stakeholders on campus. You really have to make sure that they know what you are solving in terms of your initiative. And then, of course, you have to find supporters, champions, advocates on campus. And that cuts across the different stakeholders that you have. And and you also have to find out what motivates them to embrace OER. I had a faculty at Lansing Community College that I work with, and she told me the time when I had to escort my student to the student pantry because she cannot afford to buy text, because her money was spent on textbooks for the semester, was the time that I decided to adopt an OER. And so a lot of them might use, the economic argument to embrace OER, but there's also faculty who might want to really just improve on their teaching and the way they engage with their students in their class. And then, of course, educate campus stakeholders. This is really important, and this one is an ongoing thing that we as librarians need to do across departments, units, and stakeholders on campus, because you will not reach all the people that you want to reach. So this one is really an ongoing effort. And then, of course, once faculty have decided to use OER, we need to have that mechanism where we are able to help them transition to OER. And then, of course, it's all about the money, right? In an institution that claims to support equity, access, textbook affordability, that institution has to put some financial support in order to realize the goals of the project. And I'm just going to give you a comparison of the funding that I was managing when I was at LCC, and now that I am at a research university here at MSU. So 2 years into the project, we didn't have any funding for OER. It was only on year 3 when I got the $500,000 one-time funding that our board of trustees approved. So at the time, we already had maybe 70 faculty already using an OER. But when we introduced the funding, it doubled the number of faculty who were using an OER. So we have different levels of award based on their engagement with OER. So we have 500, 1,500, and 3,000. Here at MSU, I only have 50,000, but this is ongoing, and this is going to increase as the years go by. I have that reassurance from our library dean, and we are offering it a little bit higher in terms of the amount that we are supporting faculty. So I am going to mention Open Textbook Network because it really is helpful, especially if you are starting. Open Textbook Network is a membership organization. They're based from University of Minnesota, and they maintain the Open Textbook Library. MSU is an OTN member, and we had a very successful OTN faculty workshop where we had 55 faculty who attended our October 11 workshop. I was told, Dave told me, that this is a record for all open textbook workshops that they've done across many institutions. So, as I mentioned, we have really good faculty response, and out of the 55 who attended, we have 23 who wrote reviews, and we paid them $350. And yeah, so we have spent about $8,000 for reviews. And we also did a partners workshop. So we did it separately. We had a faculty workshop in the morning, and then the afternoon we had a partners workshop, because we also want to educate our stakeholders about the benefits of OER and what they can do to collaborate with us to move the initiative forward. And what is really cool about what I do is that I manage a full OER publishing platform here at MSU. So we have a Pressbooks silver subscription that allows us to build the platform for our faculty who are creating open textbooks. So this is our first open textbook that we've published. I'm working with other faculty now, so we can publish open textbooks too that they are creating. So these are the open textbooks that are coming soon. Watch out for that. And as Cheryl mentioned earlier, you know, LibGuides, websites really are important. And I'm sure you have that in your own institution. This is our OER website, and this is our OER LibGuide. And yeah, so just want to make a plug for Pub 101. If you go to the Open Textbook Network, you can take a look at the different resources, templates that you need if you are thinking of going into publishing open textbooks. And of course, the OpenStax Institutional Partner Program is also a good way for your institution to accelerate OER adoptions. So this is an application-only program. Usually you work with a cohort. When I was at LCC, I worked with University of Arizona with Cheryl, and UMass Amherst is also an institutional partner. They have the call for proposals around spring of every year, and the work starts usually summer of every year, and it goes for 12 months. So I just want to mention, this is my last slide, the communities of practice. The really good thing about the open education community and the OER community is that we have a robust community of practice that we can turn to. If we have questions, if we have any concerns, if we need anything. And these are some of them. These are free. You can sign up, the Spark Lib OER listserv. If you are from a community college, or if you're not from a community college, you can also benefit by signing up to the CCC OER. That's the Community College Consortium for Open Educational Resources. The OTN member listserv is if you are an OTN member. And then you have the Rebus community too, which is very useful for those of you who would like to have a look as to the new open textbooks collaboration that is happening out there. And if you are a graduate student researching on OER, the GoGN is also a good resource. I am a member of that. And if you're on Twitter, hashtag OER, hashtag open education, open pedagogy, it's a good way to keep up with the people and initiatives that are happening out there. Okay, so that's my last slide. If you have any question, I'd be happy to answer them before I turn it over to Jeremy.
Thank you so much, Regina. We've got some questions that have come in. One person asked, on average, how long does it take faculty to create an OER text?
Longer than they planned. I really emphasize this when I do the kickoff training for faculty. I don't gloss things over. I tell them, if you budget 6 months, your timeline is, you know, if you have in your timeline 6 months to complete this awesome, wonderful, fabulous open textbook, well, guess what? It's not going to be 6 months because things happen, and you know, as you engage in the work. So the thing is, I give them really. So for example, you have the call for proposals now, and you are informing faculty in January. Give them at least a year. So this is for creation. A year. So if they are starting in January, almost like 90%, they cannot implement that in fall. So the implementation probably would be summer of 2021 or fall 2021. This is for creation. Of course, if it's just an adaptation or a straight up adoption, it's much quicker.
Great, thank you. think we're all set for questions at this point. So Regina, I'm going to turn it back over to you to continue.
Yeah, so I am turning it over now to my colleague Jeremy Smith of UMass Amherst. So,
hi everybody, welcome. Good afternoon, wherever you may be in the country. My name is Jeremy Smith. I'm with UMass Amherst, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our program. There's some overlaps with what Regina talked about, as well as Cheryl, but hopefully I'll fill in a few things that maybe didn't get covered. So we have something called our Open Education Initiative, and this was started in 2011, and we always hear that we were sort of a pioneer in starting a program in a library, and that really credit should go to Marilyn Billings, who's the head of scholarly communication at UMass Amherst. She was sort of the one. She went to, it may have been a webinar or an in-person event, I can't recall, but she went and got inspired, and she had gone with the director of the library at the time and said, you know, we should really do this on campus, and he was supportive. So he, as our director, went to the provost and said, hey, can we get a little bit of money for this to try it out to use as an incentive? So we did that in 2011, and we had grants of either $1,000 or $2,500. Since then, we sort of spread it out to do 3 levels, a $500 and then the others. And since then, the funding has fluctuated, and that I would say is, you know, a challenge. Is we have established ourselves at this point and can pretty much guarantee that we'll have funding yearly, but that's not 100%. But so for instance, that provost who started the program left. The new provost was a little apprehensive of contributing, so we had to go elsewhere for funds. So the library was consistently giving something towards this, but we did have a little dip in funding for a while with some provost changes. But we got funds from, you know, during those downtimes, we got money from the Friends of the Library, the Campus Center for Teaching and Learning, a campus academic IT program gave a little bit of money. So we sort of got it wherever we could. And we fluctuated between either giving 2 grant cycles a year or just now we do 1. And we've had 10 cycles so far since 2011. And they're usually offered in the spring. And this is our goal with the project. You know, we want to encourage the development of alternatives to high cost textbooks. You know, cost is obviously paramount, one of the more paramount issues at stake here. And we support, as you know, Regina has mentioned, we do adoption, adaptation, or creation of OER. So those are kind of different entry points for people to come in on at different levels. You know, someone may say, well, I don't want to spend a year of my life trying to put together an open textbook. Maybe I'm just going to find stuff that exists already. And some people who've looked at this at OER, say 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or even 2 years ago, may have looked in their discipline and said, oh, there's nothing out there, or what's out there isn't good. I always encourage people to look again, because there's new OER coming out literally monthly. Institutions around the country and the world are creating OER that's available for people to use. So, you know, just because you looked in the past and didn't find anything doesn't mean there won't be something now. So we do all variations of that. And early on with the adoption, we were encouraging people to use library resources, because if cost savings, and Cheryl alluded to this, if cost savings is an issue, of course, library materials are going to be your #1 concern, or #1 option, because we have all these resources that are available, you know, e-textbooks and licensed materials of other stripes. So we did encourage people to do that. But then we thought, well, we're giving them money to use library materials that already exist. And they can just consult with a library liaison to do that. So we've sort of tried to put the emphasis more on creating openly licensed materials. So or using openly licensed material. And for the adoption, the reason we give them $500, and they use that to just kind of restructure their syllabus or the structure of their course in some way. And then the creation, those are the people who are more creating something from scratch that doesn't exist, so they get more money. And so we provide support, and we also, another goal is to lower the cost of college. And we want to, the fourth goal here is kind of important, and this sometimes gets lost. A lot of the entry point for people to talk about OER is cost, but we try to tell faculty, you know, it's not just about cost. You can also engage in new pedagogical models for classroom instruction. So there's a whole sub movement of OER called open pedagogy, which is essentially encouraging faculty to look at how their class is structured, and, you know, maybe doing engaging the students in the creation of OER. Regina talked about that. That's a really radical thing that I think faculty really grasp onto once they sort of understand what that could mean. And students could you know, help write a chapter of a textbook in a team, and then the subsequent class could revise the textbook, and the students really get engaged knowing that something could become an OER that's going to be used for future classes. So we have several internal partnerships with places on campus since 2011. So we collaborate within the libraries. We have workshops, we do copyright and Creative Commons licensing. Our liaisons do consultations. I'm always constantly letting the liaisons know about new resources in different disciplines, so that when they go and talk to their departments, they can say, oh, there's this great new OER website or textbook or collection of videos. And circulation and e-reserve staff help track the use of OER by faculty on campus. So we've been starting to amass lists with our textbook provider to see what people are using for their courses, and seeing, because, you know, our grant program maybe only impacts a small amount of people on campus. So there are tons of people on campus maybe using OER that we don't know about, just independent of our intervening with them. So getting this data about use is really useful. Our catalogers help by adding MARC records to our catalog to increase findability of existing OER, and the Open Textbook Networks provides MARC records for any library for free to download and bring into their catalog. Our Center for Teaching and Learning, they help faculty suggest OER when they want to increase interactive learning. They want to support faculty creating new curriculum materials and scaffolding classes around OER. And then our Instructional Innovation, they're part of Campus IT. They help with classroom technology. So if people want to build a website, they can help with that. Instructional technologies and any kind of experiment, you know, technological experimentation in the classroom that they want to do as part of an OER project, they can help. So all these folks, when we do the kickoff for our grantees, they come and they sort of talk about their services. And we have a OER website, which is open to anyone to check. So we used to have a LibGuide, and we changed it to a website to make it a little bit more accessible. So all the projects that we've funded, you can, not every single one, but I think for the last 3 or 4 years, you can see the projects we funded and what they are. Links to lots of resources to learn more about OER, where to find them. And, you know, if a faculty member who isn't getting a grant just kind of wants to learn about OER, or maybe find some things in their discipline, we can send them to this site. And I did want to mention, you know, Cheryl talked about OASIS as a centralized OER repository. You know, there's not quite a Google for OER yet, but OASIS comes close. And there's another one that George Mason created a couple years ago called the Mason OER Meta Finder, or MOM. And that's a good place to send people, because that kind of is an aggregator of a lot of different OER websites. I just want to mention that. And we've done a lot of polling of our faculty and students since then. And so this, I just also wanted to talk about the money. So we've saved students about $1.8 million, and that is cumulative. So if we funded a class in 2013 and that class has been taught 3 times, we sort of add up how many times that textbook that is not being used in lieu of OER would have costed for all those. So that's where that figure comes from. And we've invested about $139,000. So for those of you with the purse strings, you can see that this is a huge return on investment that is pretty hard to beat. And also just in terms of the numbers, about 13,000 students, 110 classes, 75 instructors, and these numbers are little, there's maybe you could add a few more to this. I haven't added in last year's data yet. And then this is just by college, so you can see heavy on the sciences, the natural sciences that is, and that's mostly because some of those courses had more students in them. Just, you know, they were entry level physics, which, you know, might have had 300 students. So that's where those, and this is since 2011. And Stockbridge is our agricultural school. But this just, you know, shows you every college on campus has pretty much come through our grant program at some point. And then we also talk to the we poll the faculty afterwards and ask them, okay, you know, have you continued? We introduced you to this concept of OER, are you still using it? And the majority say yes. You know, some of them say it didn't work out and they move on, or they might have only taught the course once, so they're not using it anymore. And there's lots, you know, we could dive into this in the questions if you want to talk about some of the reasons why. And then this is, we asked them, you know, did you use any support staff on campus? And the liaisons, the library liaisons were high on that. So I think, you know, I am their first point of contact. I kind of give them the lay of the land and say, here are some of the places in the library you can go to or on campus. And it seems like a lot of them went back to their liaisons for sort of quick questions about how to access either library materials or other things. But academic computing and OWL is our, that's a group on campus that is a homegrown test bank system, which is a little outdated. It's kind of fallen out of favor, but some people still do use that. And then this is our student feedback. Anytime we fund a course that uses OER, we poll the students and we ask them about not just the materials in that course, but their attitudes and experiences with textbooks in general on campus, about costs and what they've done to avoid buying textbooks, which is all really useful data. But, you know, the majority here think that the OER that was used in the course is about the same or better. So that's a good showing of the quality question about OER and in terms of what the students think of it. And then, you know, did you find them useful? Majority, again, pretty helpful or very helpful of the students who used OER. And then I want to talk a little bit about our external partnerships. These have all mostly been mentioned. We are a member of the Open Textbook Library, and if you become a member, they're a really great resource. As Regina mentioned, they'll come to your campus and do a day-long workshop, and they will pay your faculty to write reviews. And that's an important thing I just want to highlight about the reviews. So number one, and this is why the Open Textbook Network / library was founded, was to answer this quality question. They have in their library, I don't know how many they're up to at this point, books. And at these workshops, they pay faculty to do reviews, and they go in, and not all of the reviews are good, which is interesting, because it shows that, okay, this is not just people cheerleading for OER. Some of these books may not be good, and you can read their quality reviews. It's not just, you know, rank with a star. They have a rubric for doing the reviews. And so those are really useful to send people to. And we have a book in the Open Textbook Library, and I think, I don't know how many it's up to now, but one of the reviews was sort of critical, but it was constructive. It was saying, you know, if you're doing this type of course, this book might not be good. It's more this, not that. So it's constructive. The reviews are really useful. And the Rebus community is essentially a collaborative group crowdsourcing of an open textbook. If you have a faculty member who says, you know, I really want to write X textbook, but it's a little overwhelming, the Rebus community is a great place to take that textbook, to put it up to the community and say, hey, can you help me write this? I'm looking for people. It's a great way to divide the work of if you want to create a pretty substantial textbook. We have someone in anthropology who's doing that now, and she's been working on it. And again, back to Regina's point about, you know, the time it takes. She started this a couple years ago, and she thought it was going to take, I think, like a year. And it's now, I don't know, 3 years later, and she's still working on it. It's a massive undertaking, and she's committed to it. But you know, you really do need to give them realistic expectations about the time a certain project might take. And then Pressbooks, we've been sort of referring to this. Pressbooks is a great online publishing platform that allows text to be presented in a book-like way, and also to be downloaded easily. So the print question comes up a lot. You know, there are studies that show that reading text on paper is better for retention of information, and some students might prefer printing. Having a book in Pressbooks allows you to download the whole thing as a PDF, so you could read it on a tablet, or you could just print certain parts of it or chapters, whatever you want. So it's really flexible in that way. And another external partnership, this is relatively new. We got a grant, UMass, with all the public, some other public higher ed institutions, community colleges, and state schools across the state to build capacity around the state. So the Department of Higher Ed gave us some money to do workshops essentially across the state. And those are the different institutions. It was, let's see, 2 community colleges and a state school plus us. And this was essentially for those schools around Massachusetts that didn't have an established OER program, but there was interest. So we went around and we did several workshops around the state. Yeah, it was 2 community colleges, 1 state, and then a UMass institution. And the resources and grant funds supported OER awareness and development across all. Massachusetts has 29 higher ed campuses. And so these were where we did the workshops. We sort of did some in the eastern part of the state is more populated, so we did sort of 3 in that area, and then a couple out west and in the central Mass. And oh yeah, one thing. So the goals with that project were to raise awareness, build capacity, and professional development opportunities for faculty. And we held them Northern Essex Community College, UMass Amherst, Bridgewater State, Worcester State, and Roxbury Community College. And lastly, wrapping up here, another thing that's sort of grown out of our OER partnerships here in Massachusetts is the Northeast OER Summit. And this was initiated in 2017, and the organizing committee had librarians, instructional designers, faculty from New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Lumen Learning, who's a company that produces OER based out in the West Coast, and a larger advisory group featuring members from those states as well as New York, Maryland, and Rhode Island. And this is sort of, there was David Wiley, who's a leading OER thinker, started the National OER Conference a long time ago. And it was really small, and it's now grown to almost having 1,000 people at it. It's a national conference, but the conference was sort of getting big and a lot of people couldn't go to it, and interest in OER was growing. So we felt, and others have followed suit, that there needed to be more regional, smaller OER learning opportunities. So we started this in 2017, and we're having another one in 2020. So those of you in the Northeast, interested in travel, it's a really great, we haven't announced any of the programming yet, but it's a really great opportunity to network with folks in the Northeast and beyond. Some people come from not just the Northeast. And there's several around the country, regional summits, and we have in our resources list a list of some of those other opportunities. Lots of free webinars by some of those organizations that were mentioned earlier. Really supportive and open, no pun intended, community to support people at all levels of their knowledge of OER. So this is the link of resources where you can find links for things that we referenced in the presentation, as well as other things. And there's an OER toolkit with lots of other things. And that's pretty much it for my presentation. I'd love to hear any questions that people have.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And thank you, Regina and Cheryl, as well. This has been a very interesting session, and I'm sure it's benefited a lot of people. As Jeremy said, we have time for questions now. So everyone, if you haven't yet done so, you can type your questions in the questions box. I see that a couple questions have already come in, so I'll start with those. So first question, what kind of rubric do you use to prioritize the OER creation proposals? What is the acceptance rate for such proposals?
So, yeah, go ahead, Regina.
Oh, okay. So I have a rubric that I can share, you know, with you. It really depends on the number of proposals that we get. So for this proposal, I mentioned that we are going to fund 5 adoption proposals, 5 adaptation proposals, and about 4 creation proposals. Because my intent is to spend all the money that we have for our faculty grants. So there's a different rubric that I have for each of the levels of OER engagement that we have. And Jeremy, maybe you can add too.
Yeah, we also have a rubric. We have 4 people on a selection committee, and there are many factors that go into it. How much money we have, what the proposals are like, what's the impact. So if, say, we're flush with cash and we have a bunch of creation proposals, we would probably prioritize, and sometimes we tell people to resubmit because their proposals weren't well thought out. So there's all sorts of things that go into that. But if we had to sort of decide and we were limited with money, we would probably do the ones that have the most impact, you know, how many students it's going to impact, not just at UMass, but outside of UMass, because, you know, we're looking at these things. The faculty are sort of focused on their courses, but we're looking at this and the selection committee. Okay, once this is made open and shared widely, will there be interest in this outside of campus? So lots of different factors. I could also send you a rubric, our rubric, you know, it has to do with lots of different things, but and sometimes we just have to talk it out amongst ourselves on the committee, because, you know, it's funny because each person has their own interpretation of the viability of certain proposals. And, you know, sometimes I know the person and I say, okay, this proposal doesn't do justice to what they're actually going to do. So, you know, lots of different things that go into it, but I could also share that as well.
Yeah, and to add one more, just this is gonna be quick. In order to ensure that the proposal of the faculty is really strong, and I've been doing this since my time at Lansing, I meet with the faculty. If you know, I encourage them to send me a draft of their application, and I go over it and I give them feedback, so that by the time the application is submitted in its final form and goes to the committee, I know that, you know, the bases have been covered, and we have a checklist as to what the faculty needs to do in order to have a really good application. And we have a student too who is part of our committee that will review the projects of the faculty.
Great. Thank you both. We have more questions coming in, but I'm afraid this is all the time we have for questions. So everybody, our presenters have kindly offered to answer any remaining questions in writing. So those answers will be emailed to our attendees when we send out the slides and the recording. We're so glad you all could be with us today. You'll soon receive a short online evaluation form. Please take a few minutes to respond to the questions. Your comments are valuable and help the ALCTS Continuing Education Committee plan future events. The email will also include links to today's slides and recording. You now have the opportunity to receive a certificate of attendance, and that information will also be in the email. Thanks again to our presenters, Cheryl Coulier, Regina Gong, and Jeremy Smith. Thanks also to members of the Continuing Education Committee, Joseph Nicholson and Felicity Dykes, and to Alana Warren from the ALCTS office. The support they provide make it possible for us to present these webinars. ALCTS has other continuing education events coming up. Our next webinar, Space Crunch, Tips for Downsizing a Print Collection, is scheduled for February 5th. Please see the ALCTS website to register or to find more information on these events. ALCTS also offers web courses, which are 4 to 6 weeks long, as well as 2-day email discussions. Our next e-forum will be January 7th on the topic Metadata Application Profiles for Creating Library Data. Please check the website for information on upcoming courses and discussions. Thank you all for joining us today, and this concludes our session.